very complex. We need Arlene Foster in.
And then what happened?
Guess what? She walked in. So there you go. One of our colleagues here, of course, and of course, former First Minister, which is crucial in all this, because you understand this better than anybody else in this, probably anyone in a 20-mile radius at least from here, and that includes Westminster. What is going on? Why is it that the DUP are so adamant that they will not go back into power and get this up and running again?
OK, so I'm not going to go back to the very start, but I will go back to the protocol which causes checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak negotiated the Windsor Framework. He said that dealt with that issue of checks, dealt with other issues. Unfortunately, the DUP don't believe that it does fully deal with the issue of checks. And I think they still have a number of issues they need to have sorted with the Prime Minister. I think the Prime Minister can deal with those matters. But because we've had the Belfast Agreement commemorations last week and this week again, that means there's a sort of a hiatus in the real politics at the moment. And I think once those commemorations are finished, I think that you'll see more talks and conversations happening again.
Because what about the people of Northern Ireland? Don't they want to see this all up and running again, even if there are problems with the trading agreements and all the rest of it?
We see the difficulty is if you go back into government, you're actually implementing those checks. And for unionists, you're basically saying that Northern Ireland's separate and different from the rest of the UK, and you're having to check goods coming in from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. So there is a need to get those things sorted so that ministers can get on with their jobs.
Arlene, I wanted to ask you about the American influence in all of this. What did you make of Biden's trip this week? Because Jeffrey Donaldson of the DUP was quite surprised, it seemed, by his remarks in Belfast. He said they appeared balanced. That's his thoughts. And Biden was also dangling that carrot, wasn't he, of US investment. Do you think that will make a difference when it comes to restoring power sharing?
Well, the United States are the biggest investors in Northern Ireland from a foreign direct investment point of view. So they're a very, very important market for us. So that will continue, I think, into the future. And whether the Windsor Framework means that there's more investment into Northern Ireland, only time will tell. I mean, the Americans have always been there in the background. They're not co-guarantors or whatever. It's always been the UK government working with the Irish government and the parties in Northern Ireland. And the Americans have always been there in the background. Bill Clinton, Tony Blair would say, has played a very good role in terms of the Belfast Agreement. He's always been there to try and influence and try and be supportive. And it was interesting that Tony Blair said just before President Biden arrived that he needed to be careful and he needed to be sensitive. And so the speech in Belfast from President Biden was balanced. It mentioned Ulster Scots. It mentioned the fact that there were a number of presidents who came from that background as well as from the Irish nationalist background. So it was interesting that his speech was so very balanced and scripted because, of course, he hasn't always been on message in relation to Northern Ireland.
No, he hasn't, has he? Do you hold out hope, as you say, this could be, in a sense, a catalyst? Do you hold out any hope that we could see the restoration of power sharing any time soon? Because you say the big stumbling block is what is now the Windsor Framework, right? There's no way of getting that renegotiated from scratch. So, but could it be tweaked?
No, it's not a question of renegotiating it with the European Union. I think most people accept that there's no chance of the European Union coming back to the table. But the Prime Minister could do some things, particularly around the Constitution, for example, because I was part of a court case against the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the Supreme Court ruled that the protocol suspended parts of the Act of Union. So the Prime Minister could deal with that in Parliament if he chose to do so, and he could deal with some of the issues around the green and red lanes, so-called, coming across into Northern Ireland. So I think that there are conversations to be had, but as I say, because of the commemorations and everything that's been going on, there's been a bit of a hiatus in Northern Ireland.
Do you know what? I will never quite... I know I've said this to you before, Arlene, but I've interviewed you as First Minister. And I can never get over the fact that now we can just have a chat. Do you know what I mean?
A fireside chat.
And we can wish you into the studio.
But it's just the fact that it is so complex, and there is obviously you have so much knowledge on this, and we can explain it to people in a way that you can never do when you're in power.
Well, Stephen, one of the reasons I got involved in GB News was to try and bring some of Northern Ireland to the rest of the UK without it always being about conflict, to have these sorts of conversations. And GB News has allowed me to do that, and I hope to continue doing that.
Oh, you will. And you're on air at 11 this morning.
I'm on at 11. Yes, I'm filling in for Michael Portillo this morning, and we're covering everything from Mary Quant to Emmanuel Macron.
Oh, I wonder which one will be more spicy. Ali, really good to see you. Thank you.
And you.
Thanks,
yeah,
Ali.
thank you.
Thank you very much.